We all know the story that the media told us about what happened on 9/11. 19 hijackers took over 4 planes and crashed them into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and one crashed into a field in Pennsylvania. But now I want to talk about a part of the story that the media isn't talking very much about. You see, there was a third tower that fell that day in New York. At 5:20 p.m., World Trade Center Building 7, 47 stories of steel and concrete, collapsed in on its own footprint at the rate of freefall. Building 7 had not been hit by a plane, and supposedly only suffered from small office fires. Some of you may have heard about this. You'd be surprised how many people have not. So why didn't the media report more on this? Could it be that there is no good explanation as to why this building collapsed in on its own footprint? No explanation except for a controlled demolition. That's right, I said controlled demolition, which takes many months of careful planning and preparation, which means that 9/11 wasn't a random act of terror, which we had all been taught to believe, but in fact was a carefully planned event, and we'd all been lied to this entire time. The official story given was that Building 7 was brought down due to small office fires caused by the debris from Towers 1 and 2, which if true would make it the first building ever to fall due to small office fires. After all, we've seen many buildings fully engulfed in flames, but none have ever been brought down by it. This is Windsor Tower in Madrid, Spain. It burned all night, fully engulfing it in flames. And it still stood. This is Grenfell Tower in London. It also was engulfed in flames and burned for 48 hours straight. Despite the damage caused by this massive inferno, 2 days later, it too was still left standing. Check out the TVCC Tower in Beijing. Yep, still standing. And yet, here you have Building 7, which only suffered from small office fires for only 7 short hours, and we're expected to believe that that caused it to collapse. Are you kidding me? The American people are never gonna... Never mind. This is Rudy Dent, a 32-year veteran of the New York Fire Department. He was a first responder on 9/11 and an eyewitness to Building 7's demolition.
There was an explosion. The building did come down in complete classical controlled demolition. It came down on its own footprint. There's no question about that.
This is Larry Silverstein, leaser of the World Trade Center. In the summer leading up to 9/11, Larry made sure to take out an insurance plan on the complex that would cover terrorist attacks. Listen carefully to the term that he uses when talking about the collapse of Building 7 in a documentary.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
He later had his spokesperson say that he was referring to pulling the firefighters out of the building. Not a single firefighter to date has ever corroborated his story.
Larry Silverstein talking to his insurance company of whether or not he should have the building pulled. In your professional opinion, was the building pulled?
Well, let me say this. In the New York City Fire Department, as I said, I had 32 years there. I was a chauffeur, and I was also a trained fire marshal. And we have no term that I know of that says pulling buildings. That's not our area of expertise. We've never done that. We don't do that. So for him to say that, I don't know where he pulled that out of, but it's just not part of our operations, okay?
They're saying that blaming it on office fires, just a few office fires.
Well, if it wasn't so serious a situation, that would be completely laughable. That is ridiculous. First of all, our guys were up there. They were calling for additional hand lines to mop up the isolated pockets of fire. And let me just explain one thing. Never in the history of the world, never in the history of high-rise skyscrapers has ever a skyscraper ever come down because of fire. And I'm talking massive fire. And you know the reason why? Because fire does not burn by itself hot enough to compromise and melt steel. What we had in the World Trade Center, and I saw myself, was molten lava-like pockets of molten steel. All right, I spent the night on the pile searching for bodies, and I saw that with my own eyes. So who are you going to believe? Are you going to believe a bunch of government bureaucrats or my fellow brothers, which I lost 343 guys that day?
The National Institute of Standard and Technology, or NIST, was given the task of finding out the exact reason for the collapse. This is Dr. Shyam Sunder, the lead science advisor at NIST.
Good morning. I'm here to summarize the findings from our 3-year study of the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7. Before I tell you what we found, I'd like to tell you what we did not find. We did not find any evidence that explosives were used in the collapse of Building 7. We ran down detailed computer simulations of blast scenarios. This size blast would have produced an incredibly loud sound that was not recorded on videos of the collapse nor reported by witnesses.
You want to call your mother or something? To be right now. You gotta get back or something. Wow, that, you gotta get back. All right.
Our study has identified thermal expansion as a new phenomenon that can cause the collapse of a structure. For the first time, we have shown that fire can induce a progressive collapse.
The likelihood of that failure dragging the entire building in such a fashion that all the columns would fail at the same time is an impossibility.
Impossibility?
Yes.
And you can see on the screen, the column at the very right is column 79. And that's the column that first buckles, causing the floors to come down, followed by a quick succession of failures of adjoining columns.
Steel frame buildings don't do that. That doesn't happen. It's just fantasy land.
Dit is controlled demolition.
Zeker weten.
Zeker weten. Er is nagesprongen. Dit is in opdracht gebeurd. Dat heeft het team gedaan van experts.